Congratulations! You've just been handed a huge new opportunity. Bravo! With it comes the need for new skills. Skills you'll need to master in short order. Every year, Harvard Business School Executive Education helps executives like you develop the hard and soft skills it takes to succeed in new roles. This is your chance. Go. Start by going to hbs.me/go. That's hbs.me/go.
Welcome to Aquarian Radio at aquarianradio.com. And I'm your host, Zecharia Sitchin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Sitchin. And today we have two very special guests. This is an episode of We the Anunnaki. And our guest today is Lloyd, who is a researcher in the Planet X Nibiru, written a number of books. I'll have him tell you a little bit about himself. I don't have his bio up here. Sorry about that, Andy. And Robert Evans, Jr. He's a Planet X Nibiru Anunnaki researcher as well. And before we bring on Andy, I will have Dr. Lesson say a few words. And Robert is still yet to call in. I'm going to go get him. Go ahead.
Okay, we're really excited to have you back, Andy. We've been really looking very hard at, is Nibiru coming, or is it the 180-degree Lagrange point debris that's coming through? Something seems to be coming through, and so I hope that we get some explication on that. Now, here's Janet again.
Well, go ahead, Andy. Give us a little bit of an update on what's going on, and tell our listeners, it's been a while since we've had you on, in case someone's just tuning in for the first time, a little bit about yourself and your research. Take it away.
Okay. My name is Lloyd, and I am an English researcher specializing in the study of Nibiru, Sitchin's Planet X body, and all things pertaining to the idea of an undiscovered planet in the solar system. So I'm a bit of a sort of astronomy nut, and I sort of bring quite a lot of science to the party, but I'm also very interested in all kinds of sort of out there theories, and I'm a big fan of Sitchin and very interested in the idea of alien visitation, ancient astronauts, all this kind of stuff. So that all fits in very, very well. I just like to try and get my head around whether, there's scientific plausibility to a lot of these ideas, and to try and gauge, whether this planet, where it is, when it's going to arrive, the denizens of the place, whether they're going to visit us again, the impact of that, all of this kind of stuff. So I've been on the show a few times. I've really enjoyed coming on your show and talked quite a lot about the dark star theory. And I guess today I'm looking at giving you a bit more of an update on some of the advances that have happened in the last few months, some of which are pretty exciting, I think. Some of the rumors out there about the sightings of Nibiru, Planet X, and whether they're plausible or not, and so on, and also some new ideas which I'm developing at the moment, which we could probably have a chat about as well, which might also sort of shed some light on the nature of the beast. So that's where I'm at the moment.
Yeah, Andy, you know what? It's really interesting. I've been reading a whole bunch of things on telluric fields, that once somebody is in one of these stone computers, as it were, that was set up by the followers of Horus, or the shining ones, after the great flood of Noah, that when you're in such a place, particularly since they're oriented, and they kept changing the orientation in places like Göbekli Tepe to where their supposed origin is, the person that meditates in that place, and they're surrounded by blocks of fields, so that you only are inside and you're separated from the mundane world. So Silva says that you actually can access information from whence you came. And I just wonder if you have any comment on that.
So this is like the Akashic records or something, is it?
That's right, the Akashic records, but they're aimed at specific places, and so that you're most likely to get access information that came from those places, which may well indeed be the places where our genitors came from.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what you're saying is sort of holy sites or sacred sites within the environment hold some kind of pre-programmed information that we're able to sort of grab hold of in some way. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Or perhaps the way I would say it is that all information is present in every molecule of the universe to different degrees of clarity, and by focusing thus, you access internal information. I don't say it has to be external. Maybe you're accessing the information because it's already in you.
Still there? Did we lose you? Okay.
We seem.
Oh wait, let me see. Sorry about that. Somehow you got it muted you automatically as I wasn't watching. Okay, go ahead and respond. I'm sorry. Oh, and we have Robert Evans Jr. is here as well. But go ahead, Andy. Respond to what Sasha said. I don't know why. Just muted you both. Okay. Go ahead.
I've always liked Carl Jung's ideas. I know they date back a bit now, but the idea of like a collective unconsciousness, and that we are able to access very ancient records that are sort of set within the human race, I suppose, that is common to all of us, and archetypes and so on and so forth, and they tend to come up through our subconscious and varying degrees of profoundness, and that is, I guess, a conduit potentially for truths that have lain hidden for generations or millennia or what have you, to make themselves known to us. And I guess for the most part we would access these through dream states or meditational states or what have you, and for the most part people would not really see the significance of those archetypes because they would just appear to be too strange or what have you. But I suppose if you're tuned into some of the ideas that we all discussed in these forums, perhaps we're potentially able to recognize some of those for what they are and gain some insight from them.
Cool. So what's for our audience? What is Nibiru? What's Nemesis? And what evidence is there for them that you're aware of?
Okay. Well, we all know about our 9 planets in the solar system. I think Pluto is going to become the 9th again. And the thing about the solar system is that we don't really understand very much of it. We sort of live in the nut within a larger piece of fruit, and out in the main body of the solar system, we know very, very little indeed. And it seems quite possible these days that there are other planets still waiting to be discovered. If you read the writings of very ancient Mesopotamian people that date back 6,000 odd years, 5,000 years, what have you, and you look at the discussions about cosmology and the gods and so on in a more or less literal light, then you can appreciate their cosmology through an understanding of a rogue planet that appears amongst the known planets that they describe periodically, causing either mayhem, events such as Noah's flood and so on, or great advances within human civilization through sort of the advent of knowledge or the provision of knowledge from the people that seem to exist on this world, who are essentially what our forefathers knew as the gods. So these are the Anunnaki, who are sort of Babylonian demons, I suppose, but they appear to be sort of flesh and blood, and they appear to be very much like us, and a certain reading or an interpretation of the ancient Sumerian texts indicates that perhaps they seeded us, or they had some sort of create some sort of genetic manipulation. So these are all the ideas of Zecharia Sitchin, and they're all bound up in this Nibiru entity, which is a Planet X body, which is a planet which is a substantial planet, which is capable of supporting its own atmosphere through some sort of mechanism, which we sort of discussed backwards and forwards. And this loops around in a highly elliptical orbit and re-enters the planetary zone of the solar system periodically, which delights and amazes. So a lot of people conjecture that time is now for the return of Planet X, and that it will bring upon a new age, as well as potential catastrophe. Others are thinking that it's quite a lot further out, but that the concept of this body is a sort of an eternal concept and is part of our mythical understanding, and also potentially our scientific understanding of the solar system.
Andy, in an earlier program, you had said that you thought the Nibiru was probably near Delphinius, which is way far away. But what's coming through are some junk from the collision of Nibiru with Tiamat, the proto-Earth, which knocked off Ceres and other asteroids, and locked a lot of debris into the Kuiper belt and the asteroid belt, and that's the stuff that always maintains same distance, 180 degrees, and there's also some at 190 degrees. It's called Lagrange points from Nibiru, and so that it may just be the junk that's coming through, and that may have been what actually the 7 comets that caused the terrible flood of Moses, and also flooded out the Minoan civilization.
Oh, before you respond to that, I want to bring Robert Evans Jr. on as well, because he's got some insights onto all these pictures of Nibiru, or some kind of solid round object that's near the sun and it's not a lens flare. Bob, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
How's it going, Andy?
Hi, Rob.
Hi. Say hi to Andy. Hi, Sasha. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Sasha.
Aloha.
Would you like to add to this conversation about what's coming through right now? And we'll kind of go round table in a moment here. We'll just check in, and then we'll go round table. Go ahead.
Sure. What's being seen in our skies now, anywhere from China to the Middle East to the East Coast and to the West Coast of the United States, is they're seeing a large body sitting right to the left or right below our sun. And it's my opinion that, given all the information I've been researching for many years now, that this is Nibiru. It is finally showing up in our skies. I've talked to a bunch of Native American people, and they've also seen it. Can't tell you which ones. They agree it is what I think it is. So, about 2 weeks ago, over in Kingman, Arizona, there's a observatory right there. They recorded the sun one morning, and the sun was just sparking in our skies, right in our skies. One of the guys had to go up on top of the roof to check the camera, and the camera was recording exactly what it was recording. And that has not been the first time it's been shown interacting with something pretty large since then. So I think Nibiru is in our skies right now.
So I'm going to be putting all these pictures up on the website. I just got them this morning from Bob. And so this is a collection of this round object near the sun from all over the world. Correct, Bob?
Yes. Even the Chinese television was talking about it on their newscast about a week ago. So, yes, some of the pictures are seen at sunset or just after sunset. The other ones are seen at sunrise. And it's being seen nice and large in the skies over Germany, over Bosnia-Herzegovina, up in Serbia, over the Cairo skies. Geez, and I think the chemtrails are trying to hide it, because it's mostly seen during sunrise or sunset, but not during our daylight skies. And one person got on my Facebook page and mentioned that they were actually seeing UFOs with their infrared camera around sunset, but not during the days, which led me right into the part about the chemtrails being part of it. Otherwise, we'd all see it in the skies all day long.
Right. Sasha, you wanted to say something.
Well, we're trying to distinguish between whether it's comets or debris in the Lagrange points, or whether it's Nibiru itself. And we know that sometimes comets can actually be led by their tails, and that gives a winged effect. And the question is, what's coming through? That's at least one of my questions. And how can we distinguish between Nibiru and its Lagrange point debris?
Well, all of the photographs I have, they've been checked. Dawn Hull up in Washington State, she sees it with her infrared camera. A lot of the other people are also looking at it through red filters. It's being filmed, videotaped with red filters sometimes. It's a very distinct object. It's not lens flare. There's something right there. The only thing else I can go by is the ancient text. The Colburn talks about very clearly that it hides right next to our sun, and our sun partially hides it or somehow masks it off. Unfortunately, Ippwer in the Colburn and also in his texts never told how long it was in the skies before it was right on top of their faces. And its last time here was about 1558 BC during the Exodus. I've nailed down that timeline by too many resources, by the explosion of the island of Thera, which is now Santorini, and by Akhmos I being the first Egyptian pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. And he clearly described it was in the sky, and that's why it caused all the damage around Egypt that he had to have repaired. So, and that makes it about 3,640 years ago, give or take. So it's
Andy,
right there.
What do you think?
Well, I
Andy,
think
what do you think?
Certainly there seems to have been quite a lot of meteor activity in the sky of late. I mean, there was a fantastic meteor shower with the Perseids, but I remember seeing this week a fantastic video that was taken in the States of a meteor that was presumably a meteor moving across the sky relatively sort of slowly, and then it kind of broke into two parts. The main part of it continued across, and then there's this really anomalous disc-shaped object which kind of flies out the back of it and kind of, well, it doesn't exactly maneuver. It is moving in relatively straight line, but it makes a very strange sort of passage across the sky. It doesn't have its own tail or anything, which you'd expect if it was debris. And you know, that kind of reminded me of what Robert was saying about the UFO thing, that you had this sort of incoming object that kind of sort of sent off this extra little bit that behaved rather anomalously. So there does seem to be quite a lot of meteor activity in the last year or two. I'm thinking also what happened in Russia earlier on this year or last year. So, you know, I wouldn't want to rule it out, and I think it's quite interesting also what Sasha's saying regarding the Lagrange point. I'll just put a bit of clarity on that for people who don't know what the Lagrange point is. There's kind of a geometrical pattern around an elliptical orbit, and certain points around that orbit trail are what you would call stable points, where objects can sit within the orbit, and effectively they rotate themselves around the same orbital path. So you would have, if you had a Planet X body, you could have a sort of, at its opposite end, you could also have what would be a cloud of debris, some of it which could be quite substantial, and also a sort of cross points as well, further up the ellipse. Now, Jupiter has these, and I think they're known as Trojan asteroids, which kind of sit on either side of Jupiter as they move around, and the Earth might have a few as well. But the interesting thing about a Planet X body is because its orbit is just so vast and very highly elliptical, is that as the whole orbital structure sort of rotates as the Planet X moves around, although Planet X might be a long way away, you could have a situation whereby this debris field that's sat in these stable Lagrange points itself moves through the solar system as a comet swarm. And it may well be that these effects that we're seeing might be something to do with this. What we haven't seen in the sky is a substantive comet, which one might expect perhaps if you had it. But if these objects were kind of coming and going very regularly and routinely, it may well be that, you know, they're not going to flare up particularly much anyway, because they're just going to be big slabs of rock. So it's an interesting it's an interesting field to sort of research at the moment as to whether there's been an uptick in this kind of activity, and I think it's fair to say that a lot of people think that there has been a substantial uptick in activity recently.
Well, one exploded over Romania just a couple of days ago. It's on my my Facebook page, and I just put a link on to a Janet's page for it. Meteorite explodes over Romania. It was on the 8th, where that part happened. So yes, I can understand. Most people will classify like an orbit of a planet, like a racetrack type stuff, where you have debris ahead of the planet or the whatever, debris right alongside it, and then debris following it. And that's a possibility. There are too many signs that are coming in right now that NASA said we're going to be having a lot of asteroids or meteorites coming down about June or July of this year. A French minister last May said something to the effect of that we had 500 days until we were going to have massive weather around the planet, which also fits in right around June or July of this year. The objects being seen in the skies all around the country, all around the planet, are way too large for being a meteorite or an asteroid or a comet. It's a huge ball-looking like thing that's just to the left of our sun. It's clearly being picked up as a large second sun-like thing. Now, anyone who's read the Lost Book of Enki in tablets 9 or 10, they mention that when they saw Nibiru coming up from below, that it looked like a reddish-looking star or a reddish-looking planet. And, unfortunately, I have nothing but these ancient texts from Ippawar and from Sitchin with his Book of Enki to go by. No one's ever seen this thing in the skies for 600 years. So, now everyone sees this thing next to the sun and saying, what the heck is it? And some were saying, don't believe it's nothing but sun flare. It's not real. But as it's being seen around the country, I mean, even the Italian news are talking about it now, because in Italy, one of the pictures that I sent to Janet and Dr. Sasha has it in the skies at sunset over Italy. And it's clearly a big, large ball of something. Now, the other question I'm starting to believe now is that Ippawar didn't know what he was talking about 3,600 years ago. Nibiru, we believe, orbits between Jupiter and Mars. But we also know Nibiru has moons of its own. What if this is one of its moons? And maybe there was just no way to know. Because in the Kolbrin, the ancient account that Ippawar gave for the Exodus, it was seen taking up about a fifth of the sky from the horizon upwards. That's how big it was in their skies back then. maybe this is the moon. Maybe it's not Nibiru. But whatever it is, it's in our skies right now.
Sasha wants to say something.
Well, there's a couple of things. One is that in the Sitchin works, they talk about when Nibiru came through, it lost one of its moon to Uranus when it got too close to Uranus, and that became Miranda, which is now a moon of Uranus. But also about the UFOs, the Defense Information Agency that Kennedy set off has had some releases that actually show that about the UFOs that have been helping us. There may be others, but we absolutely know that the people from Serpo has given our clandestine military the anti-gravity craft so that UFOs seeding the environment to hide what's coming in is entirely feasible, given the information that our Defense Department actually has UFOs, anti-gravity craft. And besides that, the Serpo people have allied with us and have been helping us. And that's just some of the people. When you look at the link that A.R. Borden has given us, you see there are huge indications that things like the mothership that you've been photographing around the sun have been zapping something. And the evidence is pretty overwhelming, in my opinion.
Agreed,
Andy.
yes.
Give Andy a turn. Go ahead, Andy.
I think if the existence of a Planet X body, alien life, the kind of massive consequences there might be both for our planet and for our understanding of who we are and what we are, if that kind of paradigm is heading towards disclosure, then it's important for governments.
You lost him.
Are you there?
Andy, you there?
Andy, I think we lost you. Okay, hopefully Andy will be back. It might be his Skype acting up. Okay, somebody else.
You give your shot, Janet.
Well, I just want to let everybody know I've been updating as we're talking, putting the links on the page for this show on aquarianradio.com, and I've got the pictures from Robert that he has given us this today, and I added the video about the Romanian meteorite explodes over Romania, and I have the video on the strange sky phenomenon at the DSW Observatory in Kingman, Arizona, which is very amazing when you watch it. It has it looks like lightning or something coming out of the sun. Yes.
One of my friends up in Sacramento, California, she took a picture of the sun 2 days ago, and it looked weird to her. And she filtered it where it looked like it was just the sun was just throwing out sparks in every different direction. And I posted that picture from a video from Kingman, Arizona, and whoa. And she's taken many other photographs and it's still showing it. Here in Pacifica, the sun looks so blasted bright, I can't even look at the sun.
Keep sending us those photos as you get them.
Oh, yes.
Because I will put them up on our website and on our Facebook. Andy, are you back?
Yeah, I kind of got kicked off there by Skype.
Okay.
I don't think it was anything
back.
to you or you guys. Yeah, sorry about that. It's a funny thing. You start talking about government disclosure and then you get booted off. It's a funny old thing, isn't it?
That's
anyway,
go ahead, Andy.
Say it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the significance of what we're talking about is profound, isn't it? I mean, we talk about things that are massive potential changes in consciousness and the understanding of who we are, and I think in that context, if we are looking to the heavens and we're seeing stuff, and that's something that should be sort of very, very much taken seriously, then in a way that's preparing the way for this sort of shift in understanding towards, a new consciousness. And I think that's profoundly significant. I don't know if Nibiru is in the solar system at the moment. I mean, it's a very substantial body. One would imagine you would be able to see it. But as I was saying, I've been coming up with some new ideas recently based on some discussions I've been having with some other researchers on the internet, which I'll have a chat with you about. And you know, I am starting to, I don't know, open my mind a little bit to some other possibilities, which you know, opens the door to that, particularly with regard to the way that this object might sort of encapsulate itself within some kind of shroud, you know, that it is hidden in a way, it's occulted from our view. Some people have been discussing this, and I think they've got some merit in what they say. But it's hard.
Cloaked. It could be cloaked.
It's just hard to. It's very, very difficult to talk about objects that are in plain view in the sky when astronomers are completely, absolutely silent about it. So you're in a situation where you have to kind of assume then that all these guys are either a bunch of muppets or there's a conspiracy of silence about it. And I don't know. But I do think that, you know, there are potentials here, and I certainly think the potential for some sort of meteor activity going on is definitely possible.
Okay,
so,
Josh.
Oh, I would just suggest, if possible, for people, go to Serpent Mound or Stonehenge or Göbekli Tepe and meditate there, preferably with other people, perhaps even with an entheogen, and check it out for yourself subjectively. If everything in the universe, which is holographic, is resonant within you, you can tune into yourself and find out what everything is.
Whoever wants to go next.
Okay. To kind of back up what Andy just said, that the powers that be are keeping very quiet about it, this is exactly what Ipperwer said during the last time that it was here. He said, the days of the years were shortened and the times of all things altered. The seasons were turned around so that the seed rotted within the soil and no green shoots came forth to greet the days. All buds withered upon the vines and the land lay dead under its gray shroud. The moon changed the order of her ways and the sun set herself a new course. The stars swam in new directions and the whole order of things was changed. That tells me that a pole shift happened. And there was just no way Ipperwer could describe it any other than what he just did. He says here also that my land is old, 120 generations passed since Osiris brought light to men. 4 times the stars have moved to new positions, and twice the sun has changed the direction of his journey. Twice the destroyer has struck Earth, and 3 times the heavens have opened and shut. Twice the land has been swept clean by water. Now, if my opinion, when Eisenhower met with them in 1955, they warned him about this. He had to get all of his flunkies to go through every bit of ancient documents that he could, and found out that, yes, it was in the ancient documents. All of the accounts have been scrubbed of every account except for the Kolbrin. The Kolbrin was kept quiet until about 25, 30 years ago. And since it was in Australian hands, New Zealand hands, they couldn't go through them. Now, if you read the Ipperwer accounts on Google, it only mentions a tiny bit, never mentions the destroyer, never mentions anything of what you just heard me read here. This account is only in the Kolbrin from the same person. So all the accounts were scrubbed, all clean. But even Ipperwer's accounts on Google tells of a massive flood and something in the sky over Egypt at roughly 158 BC. So they found this stuff in there. And the same thing's also there for during the flood, because the entire account is in the Kolbrin of how the ark was built. They closed the door. The stars all shifted to different positions. The destroyer was seen in the night sky. Then the water came. But it doesn't follow.
So we really don't know. what's going on for sure. We've got just a bunch of anomalies, and there's no...
That's possible. It really is. But NASA has been recording those massive things around our sun for over 7 years ago. Okay?
Right.
They're up there doing something.
Something around the sun, and it appears that they're able to plug in and harness the energy of the sun. It just could be a bunch of space travelers. This could be, for all we know, another port in their journeys. They just stop by and recharge.
What I think they're doing is that they're controlling our sun's interaction with Nibiru. Nibiru is from the Nemesis brown dwarf system. It has a different charge and different amperage, to put it mildly and simply, than the charge and amperage our system has. So as Nibiru swings through our system, our sun's interacting with it. So in my opinion, they have been controlling our sun's interaction. That's why we haven't had any of the massive space storms that were predicted back in 2012. Our sun has been very, very quiet.
Did Nibiru have its greatest effects when Nibiru was leaving the orbit of the inner solar system, and as it exited, it had a gravitational pull, which is what stopped the planet for 3 days?
Well, it were only describes that when it was right in their face, they had earthquake after earthquake after earthquake. Tectonic plates were moving, which they couldn't describe any more than what they did in his writings. This thing was in the sky. It was raining down stones. It was raining down fire. All the stones destroyed most of the stuff, including the palace.
Well, that sounds like it's raining down debris, and that sounds like
exactly
it might be the Lagrange point debris interaction with our atmosphere, raining down debris. Nibiru, unless it's breaking up, is going to remain solid. So that seems like it's two different things. We have the passing of Nibiru, which has its gravitational effects, and it could be causing the planet. There's something that makes a planet stop. We have that story where
and there is that possibility. He says this thing's in their skies for 9 to 10 days, and it's causing all this damage. It caused the exodus. It caused the explosion of Thera. The Thera was mentioned absent-mindedly.
Let me ask you.
Well, when Thera exploded, it caused a massive tidal wave to wash right over Crete, and then head straight down to Egypt. Okay, the people that were in the exodus.
When was Joshua's event where he blew down? They had him blow down the walls. Who was that? Joshua, right? Blew down the walls with the trumpet. That's when the sun stopped, and it was right.
No. That was a much later battle. Jericho was much later.
Okay. Well,
earlier, Joshua was pursuing some enemies, and they it looked like it was going to get dark, and he was about to quit. And Enlil said, "Oh no, listen, what's coming down astronomically is going to give you extra daylight. Go kill him, kill him, kill him." He just liked to kill people. And at the same time, on the other side of the world, it was dark for 20 hours.
So who was that? That was who?
That was Joshua, too.
And what year was that, approximately?
I'll look it up, yeah.
Yes, okay. Because that wasn't at the same time of the Exodus, correct?
Yeah, Velikovsky mentioned that, yes.
Way after the Exodus.
Okay, so the Exodus might have been the Lagrange point, and the Joshua might have been the Nibiru. I'm putting it out there. Andy, what do you think?
The Velikovsky thing and the Exodus thing, I guess that is an event that is said to have occurred sort of 3,600 years ago. So if Sitchin's right about the 3,600-year orbit, then if you are in a position where you are placing a return now, or that you're looking at the evidence in the sky and saying, look, well, it's here, so it must have been back at 3,600 years ago, then whichever way round you look at it, then the Exodus is the natural thing to look at. And as Rob says, the Velikovsky has himself described the Exodus event in sort of cosmic terms, in the terms of this sort of appearance of big red objects and so on. The problem is that you have different theorists coming up with different ideas, and I'm afraid I'm no better or worse than any of the rest of them. But I would just say that if you're talking about Sitchin, then his placement of Nibiru in the time scales is a completely different series of times. So he sort of put forward a time at the beginning of Sumerian civilization, roughly 3,700 years ago, 3,700 BCE, and that would then correspond, he thought, with a sort of return around about 160 BC, which I suppose was sort of a pre-Messianic period, which would mean that we shouldn't really sort of expect to see a return for, donkey's years really, isn't it? Another 2,000 years or so. 1,600
right.
years. And that, from his perspective, it was, really sort of out there. But, Sitchin was a little bit funny with all of this. And I think he adjusted his position as time went on. He was ambiguous. He sort of allowed the possibility that perhaps, it might be upon us and so on, and was very interested in the whole end of days argument. And he lacked a certain amount of clarity in his later books, and eventually his last book, I think, that actually sort of tried to pinpoint a timing, came up with about 500 BC, around about 550 BC, which I think, if I remember rightly, he sort of said it was something to do with the destruction of the temple or something like that in Jerusalem. And it was around about that time. So this would be the first temple, presumably. So I'm not in any way, shape or form a biblical scholar. So I'm not really going to be able to give a profoundly insightful eye on this. But I would say that, you pay your money and you take a choice. If you listen to Velikovsky, you're going to get one time, and if you listen to Sitchin, you're going to get another time. So, it's open season, really.
Oh, my notes show that Joshua was leading it was a combination of Egyptians and Israelites, the descendants of Jacob, 40 years after the Exodus.
Oh, it's the same time. Okay.
No, after.
But it's within the same approximate years. It's with the effects of Nibiru coming in aren't going to just last a day. They are going to be for a time frame of like about 75 years or so. So that's within the range. And it might have some effects coming in. It might have some effects when it's on the far side of the sun. It might have effects when it's returning to the outer orbit. That's what my understanding is.
I'd agree with that.
Okay.
Now, the part that nails it down is Ippor talks about, O son of Hebrew, forgive the people of this land for their ways. Reveal your greatness by serving those who no longer walk in the light of your instruction, even as you served their fathers in days long gone. So he's talking about Hebrews, which has left during this exodus from Egypt. So, supposedly the Hyksos, Hyksos, were in charge of Upper Egypt from the 12th to the end of the 17th Egyptian dynasty. Akhmos I was the first Egyptian pharaoh, starting the 18th dynasty. So these people who left Egypt, possibly the Hebrews, possibly the Kebrus, possibly the Hyksos. The Hyksos were chased further up into the area towards where Jerusalem is right now by the Egyptians, I think, twice more. And they used the same name back then that they had chased the Hyksos up there. So whether we have two people using the same name or they were all using the same name and it was changed, I have no way of knowing. But this is basically so I had to research this without reading either Sitchin or Velikovsky. My friends all told me don't even go near. They told me to research Mosai of China. And Mosai, in his book 5, talks about 3 gods coming down to China, and they aligned themselves with one of the warlords, and they caused fire and cold and sand to be happening during a period of time, which is almost the exact time as for Egypt. So, basically it's the same ballpark of time, just as you said for the other account.
So if Nibiru comes through, we should look at what kind of effects might it have. It seems that if you're looking at the timeline, it's coming back now, and what we're seeing in the skies is probably Nibiru or one of her moons. But every time Nibiru comes through, it doesn't mean that something negative is going to happen. So if we're seeing it, then, it's here, and nothing's really happening. Or is it going to happen?
Right.
Let's just talk about that for a round. What do you think? Who wants to go next, Andy or Sasha? Andy, your turn.
Okay, well, short answer to that is absolutely right. You could definitely have this thing pass through this. I mean, the solar system's a vast place. You could definitely have this thing pass through. It's not going to necessarily have any kind of obviously impact event, but any kind of dramatic effect. As Rob was saying earlier on, you're talking about two bodies in the form of the sun and the dark star or Nibiru or whatever it is that have potentially, they're like two major magnets which go up against each other and create a lot of electromagnetic distortion within the solar system, which could create solar storms, could create a lot of activity within the sun, solar flares and so on, that potentially, given our reliance upon electronic gadgets and so on, means that we could have all kinds of problems with satellites and stuff if things are kicked off with the sun. So our modern, our civilization has never had to deal with that kind of catastrophism. It's either been a straight out close passage, gravitational tug, big disaster, ice cap melt-in, destruction, catastrophe, or nothing at all, Anunnaki return, things kind of get updated, there's a little bit of mucking around, so on. Or, but this time round, if there is a return, if you have that kind of celestial sort of impact in terms of the sun being disturbed by this body, whether it be near or far, then, potentially our civilization would be the first which would sort of take a hit, even if this thing wasn't anywhere particularly close, just from the sun's activity. I wanted to add something else into the mix as well, because one of the things I discussed on my blog last month, on the Dark Star blog, was a little thing about a Sumerian planisphere, which is a sort of a well-known piece. Sitchin discusses it in his books. It's an artifact that's in the British Museum, and some guys, some scientists were looking at this, the descriptions that are placed upon this planisphere, which describe an object moving across the sky and there being a great cataclysm and all the kind of things that we would also discuss in terms of the Exodus. And he placed this quite reasonably to an event that may well have taken place where a mountain basically got toppled in the Alps when a huge fireball moved across the sky, across the Levant, impacted or at least exploded over the Alps around about 3100 BC. And this scientist, or a couple of scientists, were sort of making the theory that this planisphere was discussing the sort of advent of this object and a great catastrophe that occurred around that time, which threw up a huge amount of rubbish into the atmosphere, a huge plume of smoke that then set out a sort of nuclear winter and so on and so forth. So you got another potential timeline there, and now they were saying, other people have come forward with this, they kind of like this idea, and they said, well, this could be talking about like Sodom and Gomorrah and so on, the sort of impact on the Levant region. So then you could argue quite reasonably, well, if this was an impact to do with Nibiru in 3100 BC, then the next time round would be in the middle of the Dark Ages, which itself is a fairly mysterious period of time whereby the Earth appears to have gone through certainly in Europe, seems to have gone through some kind of, mysterious sort of nuclear winter period where, the Dark Ages were literally the Dark Ages.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So you could, what we try and do is we try and tie up all these dots to try and sort of make sense of this and try and see if there are patterns. Now, what Rob's suggesting is one pattern. It's not an unreasonable pattern. It suggests something's happening now. Sitchin's previous one was a different pattern. He tied it back to sort of a timeline at the beginning of the last ice age or so on. But you could also suggest that this might be a timeline, which would suggest that the Nibiru came through only about sort of 1,400, 1,500 years ago. So there's lots of different possibilities, and from my mind, I think it's a good idea to just remain open to them and take the evidence as it appears in front of us.
Well, there's also A.R. Borden said that we got shifted to yet another timeline, and I don't know if you're familiar with A.R. Borden and the link. Listeners, I recommend you Google that, A.R. Borden, B-O-R-D-O-N, the link or the linkage, and it was a secret meeting, a group that meets every year. They're part human and part extraterrestrial, and A.R. Borden was working with Michael Lee Hill, who's in the Erie, Pennsylvania part of the country. Anyway, they said that we got the meeting notes from the 2011 meeting that they had, and they said that they were going to move the Earth out of harm's way with the Nibiru passing by shifting the timeline and then shifting us back. Now, I have no way to prove that happens or not, but just putting that into the equation, we could be looking at a force that is out to try to protect us from undergoing such huge apocalypse as we have before. So I'm just throwing that out there. You want to say something, Sasha?
Oh, okay, yeah. This is going back to some the thing that we covered. I think that Bob, your hypothesis about the Hyksos is right on. My research indicates that basically the favored tool of Enlil was a guy named Terra, who Enlil sent to Ur when Enlil's son Nanar was given control, and the son of Terra was Abraham, who was called Abram in those days, and Abraham ultimately came to Canaan, and he had Isaac, and Isaac had a kid named Jacob, who became Israel, and basically when Israel and the Israelites and the Egyptians that were with him fled Egypt, they fled into Canaan, and even though they had some of their relatives, like Inanna's relatives became the Phoenicians, Tyre, and Queen Jezebel married the king of Omri of Israel, and what happened is that Enlil had her murdered and all of her family murdered because they allowed pluralism and they allowed people to worship Inanna. So that it's the same people. They're from Anatolia, from the Hittite area. They are the Hyksos, and I agree with you, Bob.
Okay. Well, all of my stuff has been based off what I've found during my research. My wife, Amy, she also did a lot of research, and we were working on this together for a long time until she just got totally fed up with having her computer taken out by viruses. Our government sent out a very advanced space probe back in the mid-90s, and this space probe was created by humans and aliens from Area 51. It went out, it actually met up with Nibiru, orbited it, videotaped it, came back here to the Earth, downloaded all of its stuff to a secret Jesuit base up in Alaska on a HARP facility. This has been backed up by Christopher Barbato. The images were on his friend's website for a while. Lucas Cantamburlo did a video about this in 2008 and talked about it. The video transcripts for it's called The Return of Planet X. The video transcripts tell very clearly how the Pope Pius XII, knew that this 1955 knew that a rogue planet and its brown dwarf sun was going to be coming through very soon, and that they were the Anunnaki, and that he had met personally with them. So, yes, Eisenhower knew about this. The Bishop of Los Angeles knew about this. The Pope has known about it ever since. Pope John Paul II talked about this in 1980. NASA supposedly found it in 1983. Dr. Robert S. Harrington died mysteriously before he was supposed to do a news conference about this. All of the world's governments started building the deep underground military bases during the 70s and 80s. One person who became a politician up in Norway said they had built all of their domes because Nibiru was coming in. So you've got all the deep underground military bases around the planet which are being built and have already been built before now because this thing was coming in. It was all leaked by Hollywood back in the movie Deep Impact, where you had a black president and the deep underground military bases could only hold so many, and they were being built all around the planet. There's no reason for them to build these massive things, the deep underground emergency seed vaults, which we have one up in Denver. One was up there in the Svalbard Island. Another one that's even larger is over in England. They're only just recently starting to become known as being outed one after the other. Now, the seed vaults link up right in with what Ipper said, that there was a pole shift, saying that the sun set and rose in new locations, that nothing grew after the Exodus. So the seed vaults are a direct tie-in with ancient Ipper's accounts. The deep underground military bases are tie-in, just as in the movie 2012, ancient Chinese Emperor Yao, believe it or not, Yahou, somewhere around 29,000 years ago, said that the ocean topped the high mountains of China. So all this stuff has been slowly leaking out that what this thing causes. Now, whether those things around our sun, which are massive space probes, whether they're doing what I think they're doing or not, something's going to happen. And, laying back and saying, oh, it's just all text and stuff, that's one way to handle it. And then the other way is to say, this is what ancient history told us. And that's what I've been digging up. And then only after I did my research did I read the books. And the Lost Book of Enki fell right into all the questions I had from China to Egypt. I haven't read any of Velikovsky's stuff yet.
All right, well, we're running out of time here, so let's do a wrap-up round here, and we'll go back to Andy. Any final things you want to share with our listeners?
Did you get to share the thing that you said was new that you wanted to share?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'll just run through some stuff real quick. The last couple of months, we had that investigation of that comet, and it turns out that this comet isn't what they all thought it was going to be. It's not a big ice ball. It turned out to be a big rock. And the scientists looked at the water composition of that rock, and there's been a long-standing theory that, the Earth's water has come from the comets. And it's kind of gotten blown out the water, literally, by this discovery of this and several other comets, which indicate that the water of the Earth has not come from the comets. It's more likely to have actually come from the asteroid belt. And this links the Earth to the asteroid belt, which is a very bizarre thing because they're quite a long way apart, which, if anyone who's interested in Sitchin sort of is going to, prick an ear up at this, because clearly there is a sort of a trail then that may well support the destruction of Tiamat, the creation of the Earth from, and the creation of the asteroid belt as a result of the impact of Nibiru, the Dark Star, what have you. So that's something I've sort of really working on at the moment with my research and the isotopes of water and where water from the Earth come from, and it certainly looked like science is moving in Sitchin's directions with that. So it's very exciting stuff for me.
Okay. Sasha.
Oh yeah, I'd like to just dovetail on that. The probes of Ceres, which is a asteroid, maybe a planetoid, show that it spurts water periodically, actual liquid water, which then freezes and falls back down. It gets hot and goes up again, and so that is consistent with Sitchin's idea that Nibiru and one of its moons actually collided with the proto-Earth Tiamat when that was between Mars and Jupiter, and left the things like Ceres there between Jupiter and Mars in the asteroid belt, and knocked the proto-Earth Tiamat into its present location between Venus and Mars. So what you're saying about the water having coming from the initial collisions rather than from comets seems to be supported.
Mm.
Okay,
well,
Bob,
you know,
final word.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Andy. You can respond. Go ahead.
I was going to say that the science itself is having a real problem with this, because they've held on to this theory for years and years and years, the late Veneer theory it's called, and it's really, really got into trouble, and they cannot square the circle. And the whole concept of Earth migrating, that it was never actually here to start with, it moved to this position, is something that's anathema. They just cannot even begin to consider it as a possibility. You know, it's the only thing that makes any sense over the data that's coming back from both comets, asteroids, the moon, and so on. So that, you know, they're going to have to wake up to this. And unfortunately for them, it's here be dragons. You know, they open this Pandora's box, and it's a big Sitchinite thing. So I'm kind of excited, and I totally agree with Sasha with what he's just said. You know, the evidence is mounting all the time with this now.
Okay, Bob.
Bob, you there?
I agree. You know, all this stuff adds up to what I think it all adds up to what I've been researching.
Okay, anything else you want to share?
That's it.
Okay.
Great show.
We did another great show. Got it in the can. It's a take. So I want to thank everybody for joining us for this week's episode of We the Anunnaki, and do come back again next week. We periodically broadcast earlier so that we can accommodate our UK researchers like Andy Lloyd. And Andy, thank you so much for coming on our show again. We really appreciate it when you come here and give your updates and lend your energy to this show. Oh, thank you, Bob, once again. Brilliant as ever. Thanks for sending us the pictures. Thank you, Sasha, for your wisdom. Andy, do you have any more books coming out? Or do you want to tell our listeners about your website and our books before we...
About the wonderful fiction books. I love them.
Oh, yeah, and your fiction books are good, too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've had a tough year this last year, and I've been doing a lot of work in my day job, so I haven't really had a lot of time to write, and I've had a lot of people sort of giving me a bit of a poke about this, really, and they are right. It's something I've gotten out of the habit of doing, and I do need to really think about this. I wrote the fictional books. It's a trilogy. I've only written the first two. I really should get on and write the third one, and I'm hoping this year I'm going to have a little bit more time to, devote to some of this stuff. It's certainly looking like I may well have. So I'm hoping to get something going. But, I'm keeping the blog going. I've been actually sort of picking up the pace with that a little bit with a view to sort of perhaps writing some more. So, yeah, I'm hoping 2015 is going to be a better year, and I'll have something to show for it by the end of it.
I hear you about the writing. I've just been consumed with doing things all just do.
Yeah.
Chakra, setting a cup of a...
What's the URL for your blog?
Yeah, your blog. And I have it all on aquarianradio.com on a page. I generated it for Andy. I have a bio page plus his the page for today's show. But if you want to just say it in case anybody's just listening to this, what's your blog or what's your website?
I run two websites. People can just basically look me up by Googling Andy Lloyd and they'll find me. But the Dark Star Theory website, which is darkstar1.co.uk, is a very old one. And And then I've sort of got a newer site now, andylloyd.org, which is, I think, a bit of an easier thing to find. And on that, I've been sort of maintaining this Dark Star blog, which is, a monthly blog of bits and news. And I'm up to blog 21 now, so I've sort of really kind of kept this afloat. I'm really enjoying doing this. So that's andylloyd.org, and there's loads of links on there to all kinds of stuff on there.
Well, thank you. Robert, what's your website?
That's starshipsaroundthesun.com.
And you have a Facebook page, right?
Yes, Robert H. Evans Jr. And I just poked Andy on his Facebook page.
Oh, Robert, I haven't been on I haven't been on Facebook for years. I'm so sorry. I haven't been on there for so long. Oh my goodness. I do Twitter and so on, but I'm not the best.
Last time you were on there was when Sitchin died.
I think so. It was a long time ago. Yeah. I found I was getting consumed by it, and it was taking over a bit. So yeah, I've not been very good on that at all. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's like a drug. Facebook drug. And then you get thrown into Facebook hell because you violate their terms. You don't even know what you did. It's like, what? What did I do now? Oh, my goodness, I'm a bad girl. I'm in the corner. All right, well, I think that's it for today. I just want to tell our listeners our website dealing with the Anunnaki is EnkiSpeaks.com, and we have extraterrestrialcontact.com, NIMMA, NINMAH.com, and we're working on it all the time. We're on Facebook all over the place, and AquarianRadio.com. So thank you for joining us today. Much love and blessings, and aloha.
You're looking for meaning and purpose in your work.
Hello? Hello?
We all are. Every year, Harvard Business School Executive Education helps executives like you reevaluate goals and develop both personally and professionally to turn their careers into their callings. Don't be different. Be changed. Go. Start by going to hbs.me/go. That's hbs.me/go.